My name is Shivani Aggarwal. I am a senior at Harvard College. I study biology. I'm a proud member of Winthrop House, but today I'm coming to you in my capacity as a peer speaking tutor with the Harvard College Writing Program, part of XPLUS 40, to teach you guys all a little bit about public speaking. So let's see. So credits to the writing college or the college writing program for a lot of this content and mindset for how to approach it. And I think something that I want to ground us in as we begin our exploration of public speaking is really why should you care, especially for this particular audience. I wanted to keep this in mind. I think this is something relevant, whether you're a member of a student organization or in particular for this group as a student leader, because you are constantly facing situations where you need to communicate your message, where you need to persuade members to take action or make changes. We're preparing these action blueprints, and how are you then going to put that into practice and convince students that this is worth their busy time and energy, especially as Harvard students? And then also something actually that I wanted to talk about specifically as well for this group is how to share your work beyond your group. So this could be administrators, external stakeholders, and in the context that we'll specifically look at, interviews. So oftentimes interviews are going to ask you, what did you do in college? What kinds of work have you been doing? And we're doing all such great work that I've already been so privileged to see. So I want us to help have a space to think about how to communicate that. So kicking us off, part one, how do we communicate with others and persuade others? What makes an effective communicator? I've got my tips here and I'll talk about them in a second, but to keep this interactive, maybe you guys could use the raise hand feature, and I'd love to know what just the most, off the top of your head, when you think of someone who's an effective communicator, you've seen a peer, a professor, yourself, what comes to mind? Words, phrases, anything. Yes, Olivia.
I think of one of my CS professors who sort of broke the mold and that he didn't take himself too seriously. And because of that, I was able to sort of be less stressed when I was listening to him speak, because I knew that he cared about, making sure that the environment was lighthearted and accepting in a way.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. That actually relates to something that I think is unique about oral communication, is that there is also this element of spontaneity. When somebody is too rehearsed, seems like they're too in the mold, you think preparation is good, but if it doesn't seem to have that degree of in the momentness and fun about it, it can also be kind of stagnant. I also see Lucas in the chat, concise. Yes, absolutely. Something I think I'm personally working on as a speaker, because time is actually quite short when you're communicating verbally. And then Abby, yes, connecting with the audience personally and empathetically. In rhetoric, they talk about things like ethos, pathos, logos. I'm sure you guys maybe have all encountered that in high school, and that ability to build credibility and to appeal to emotions. It's interesting because it's just one of those concepts that's often discussed, but it does hold a lot of power for how we can see a speech really land. So let me talk about the three things that I've listed based on my experiences that I think are really important. The first, integrating the physical, the auditory, and the physiological. So what I mean here is that really none of these are actually referring to the content. Can you integrate the content with the physical, your body language, the auditory, how loud you're speaking, how soft and fast you're speaking, and then the physiological. What level of confidence are you employing in the situation? What emotion are you conveying as well? Because in any speech, there are going to be times when the mood is happy, times when the mood is sad, and you don't want it to be the same in all cases. So I think this idea of just keeping in your head, integrating physical, auditory, physiological is something that's really powerful, because this also hopefully gets the idea that there's no one right way to do it. You're going to need to be able to adapt your body language, adapt your volume, and adapt your emotional tone to the situation that you're in, and find something that's authentic to you. Maybe I'd like you to take a moment now just to think to yourself, based on how we've kind of defined physical, auditory, and physiological, when you currently speak, be it in class, be it in your student organization or a different setting, which of these three do you pay most attention to? And like, which of these three perhaps do you maybe not pay as much attention to? You can just take a minute to think about that. And perhaps that's the word, that's the one of the things you can carry from this workshop, to think about more ways that you can be conscious of. If anyone wants to share, you can drop it in the chat or raise your hand, but that's also totally optional too. I see some in the chat. Nice, yeah. Absolutely. I see Olivia's definitely two and forgetting one, and the physical, I'll talk a little bit more about that then, just because it kind of came up in the chat. When we're thinking about the physical, oftentimes when the speaker is at ease, the audience feels at ease. When the speaker is holding tension somewhere in their body, that actually can be translated to the audience in a way and make the audience uncomfortable. So it's almost like you have to work on relieving that tension, not just for yourself, but for your audience's sake. And therefore, I think some of the exercises that Abby had us do, like the body scan earlier in section this semester, are definitely great to revisit. Then two others: make clear the call to action. Oftentimes, especially in the context of student orgs, you have something that you want your student members to do. Maybe it's, pub this event. Maybe it's come help with this other event. Really making clear that call to action. It seems simple in theory, but putting it into practice, I want you to, okay, tonight, email this out to 2 lists and mark them on the spreadsheet, making sure there's no ambiguities whatsoever, so that when they leave the meeting, they know exactly what they're going to do, is going to make sure that you don't lose them along the way. Because anytime there's any vagueness in the call to action, it's very easy to know why you should do it, but you're really stuck not knowing what it is or how to do it. And then lastly, make clear the what's in it for me, the WIFM. This is a sort of centerpiece of X+40 if you happen to have taken the class, or a preview, if you will. So kind of a little intro there. In any type of verbal and oral communication, think about, why is your audience listening? Why do they care? Answer that question for yourself explicitly. And if you can answer that question, that can shape the language that you use and can shape what you make explicit in saying it. So making sure to say that anytime you're saying, let's pub this event, or let's do this outreach, ground it in, why should my members care? It's because this is going to lead us to greater frosh. And we're so excited to see that happen. Or we put a lot of hard work into this event, and so it's going to be great to have people show up to it too. That with these 3 things in mind, I think you can make your oral communication polished and bring it to that much greater level. Given that this is a workshop, I want to make sure there's opportunities for you guys to talk and you guys to participate. So I'd love to go into breakout rooms for like 5-ish minutes, maybe less, and pairs, and each of you have a chance to think for a minute about a student org you're a part of, and maybe a call to action that might be applicable. So having an event, showing up for some kind of team duties, coming to some kind of meeting, making sure to send some kind of email. Any kind of call to action can be very diverse. And just take a minute, think about how you might say it, and then give the sort of 30-second version of it to your partner. And if there's time for feedback, I think that's awesome. So let's launch into that. Maybe Abby, you could help me with pairs breakout rooms.
Shivi, do you want to be in a breakout room, or do you want to be? Okay.
Yeah, I'll be.
So there's going to be one room that has 3 people.
Okay.
Here you go. They're all open.
Welcome back. I hope that was at least somewhat instructive. Maybe if one person feels comfortable sharing the action that they framed for their partner, that would be neat to hear. No worries if not. We can keep chugging along. So I think anytime you have conscious practice, that's definitely something that's really helpful. And now I want to bring us to pivoting to communicating with external audiences. Potentially this next image is something that may be familiar to many of you guys, having to be in an interview setting, not even on Zoom, just like kind of give me a raised hand in the camera if you've had an interview in the last 3 months of any kind, club, job, internship, anything. Yes. We're always dealing with this, trying to figure out how to convey our narrative, our story. It reminds me of Marshall Gans and the importance of public narrative. So if you guys want, I'd love to know if anyone wants to share a most memorable interview experience, good, bad, anything. Olivia, did you want to share?
College interviews, senior year of high school. I showed up to an interview and I said, I want to study biomedical engineering, but I love musical theater. And I was told, this is for MIT, I got asked, you do understand this is a technical institute, comma, correct?
Oh,
so that one will live up there rent-free for the next couple of years.
Yes.
Kind of like on a similar note, I flew to a city 5 hours away for this really big scholarship interview. So it's like one person, it was me against like 8 people, and it was like for a scholarship at the University of Texas. And at the point of the interview, they were like, so where did you get in? And I was like, Harvard. And then later they were like, so if you had to pick one, UT Austin or Harvard? And I was like, how can they make me pick? So I broke down crying. And I was like, you see, I can't pick, I'm FGLI. There was this entire thing, but they literally made me pick on the spot, and my default mechanism was just to cry and kind of default.
Thank you for sharing. My goodness, yes, interviews, they like bring us to our most vulnerable in a way, and they really do ask us to construct our narrative quickly and neatly packaged. And I also see Lucas in the chat, you mentioning being 6 hours late. My goodness, I'm sure there's more of a story there. So towards that end, how can we be more prepared as speakers to neatly package our narratives? This is a technique I want to introduce you guys to called the STAR technique. You can read the different steps here. We're a little short on time, so I want to make sure that we can get to a chance for you guys to practice this in action. But essentially, this is a great way to respond to those classic behavioral interview questions where they're going to say, tell me about a time when you succeeded, or tell me about a time when you worked with a team. How can you be concise, specific, and get from the setting to the result within the span of like 60 seconds? If you do a little pre-work beforehand, maybe for 1 or 2 organizations or settings, going through these 4 steps and writing it down, you can make sure that you're very concise, getting to all 4 of these components, which will leave a great impression in your interviewer's mind. Key things to check as you're applying the STAR technique: are you being concise? Are you being specific? Did you think about the WIFM in this situation? Bring it back from the first section, depending on exactly like if you're talking to the Texas University team versus the Harvard team, thinking about a little bit of what are they looking for when they ask this question. If they're just asking the horrible age-old, tell me about yourself, they don't really want to know, about your 3 cats and 2 siblings. How can you maybe already start to pivot the end of that question to answering, and this is what brought me to wanting to be a part of your organization? These are things that I think we all do instinctively to some degree, but I think bringing them out into the open explicitly can help us to sharpen our communication skills. And last one, did you smile? Don't have to always smile, but I think a little confidence in that way and body language can go a long way. I want to have us a little bit of time to go into breakout rooms just to practice this, but are there any questions, just in case we went through that a little bit quickly? Otherwise, maybe I'll turn it over to Abby to send you back into breakout rooms. Your task is to ask each other this question: tell me about a time when you were part of a great team, and see what you can come up with, hopefully employing some of the STAR technique. Welcome back. I hope you got a chance to maybe go through that question, talk about with each other, see how it felt on its feet. And really, that brings us to the end of what felt like, at least to me, a very quick 20 minutes. My goals were really twofold: to just get you guys exposed to some of these ideas that you can use to frame how you approach public speaking. And I think that once you make them explicit, it's easier then to implement, and then to give you a chance to put them into action. And so that really is the end of all I have to say. This is something we're learning from all of each other though. So if you have public speaking tips, please drop them in the chat. I would love to learn from them too. And that's all I have to say. Thank you guys.
Shivi, great job.